Welcome to episode 7 of Elephant Diaries. My name is Siana Bangura and I'm a writer, blogger and poet from London. And on May 21st, I've got a book coming out called Elephant, my debut collection of poetry. So now, can you believe it, we're in April, and next month my book is dropping. And at the end of this month we've got my pre-launch event, which is happening on April the 30th at George Tavern on Commercial Road. And there we'll be really discussing some key themes that come up in Elephant with a panel of amazing people. Really excited. Leaving my mother's nest was not the easiest of things to do. The day before my big move, I learnt of the death of my friend. I read the email over and over again, learning that the face of sorrow could look so much like mine. Weeping over endings as new beginnings forced their way into my suitcases. All I could see were faces, waving me goodbye. Silence felt so heavy. Tangible weight, I was summoned to deadlift. Grief is a funny thing, confusing and merciful all at once. A stark reminder of your humanity, an awareness of your limited capacity. How hard it was when they left me on my own in my new room, my wings feeling clipped as they stretched out wide, in flight. In the stillness of the night, I know I should be grateful, but heavy are the lessons you learn outside of the classroom. That poem was called University, and it's the first poem in this section, section 7, which is all about loss and about death, basically. Loss of people who have been close to me, and also loss of just things that are important to you. And the story behind this particular poem is actually part of the Black British Girlhood series of poems I put together for that exhibition. And in that collection we have Passport, we have Hair Care, and a few other poems, Coconut as well, that you've been introduced to earlier on in this series. This particular poem really is dedicated to my late friend Ayebola Owatemi, Ayo. He passed away a while back now. I found out about his passing the day before I had to leave to go to Cambridge University and start my new life. So you can only imagine how difficult that was. But whatever pain I was feeling then, I'm sure was only a small fraction of the pain that his family were going through. And I remember that being like a really key thing that I was thinking the whole time, that I had no right to be so upset because, I'm not his family or anything like that. And I remember how it happened was I was looking through my emails and I just got this email that had in the header his name, and I opened it up thinking it was some kind of good news, and no, it wasn't good news. It basically detailed the fact that he passed away whilst travelling in Peru and drowned in the Amazon River. So really horrible, really, really horrible. And I didn't believe it at all. And I think denial is one of the first things you feel when you learn about the passing of someone. And I remember what I did was send him a text straight away, being like, hey, how are you? Are you okay? Like, I'd heard some really messed up news, but I think it's a mistake, basically. So that was really sad. And I was with my boyfriend at the time as well, and he was kind of trying to comfort me, but I think we were all very shocked and overwhelmed. And it's one of those things I didn't really get to grieve because I had to go to my new university, this place I'd worked so hard for, this place I longed to be at, and all of a sudden the idea of going there felt so horrible, and I had to be thrown into Freshers Week and pretend that everything was okay. And I think that's something that I perhaps never really fully kind of dealt with, fully digested. But he was kind of definitely the first person that I knew really well that passed away. So I think that was just kind of a really difficult time. This poem, this very short piece kind of reflects on that. This idea of going to university and, I went to one of the best universities in the world, but some of the most important and lasting lessons I learned were outside of the classroom. And that's definitely the theme, again, of this particular section, that the university of life wins. You know, the University of Life gives you the most important lessons that no book can ever teach you. And this poem, yeah, it's just kind of dedicated to him, because I don't get to talk about him too much. The people that we knew, the friends we had in common, you know, we've drifted away from all of them. So yeah, he's not really someone I get to talk about too much, but I wanted in my first book to just have a little piece of him in there. When you cease to exist for a while, the world will continue. Romeo will keep breaking hearts, and the storm that has been brewing outside will keep coming for your bones. And the bailiff will still knock on your neighbour's door and demand each score is settled. The pavement will still be full of cracks and discarded gum, and the dishes will still need washing, no matter how many times you skip breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Your Bible will not have changed any of its words when you return, and your mother will still worry about you, like she always has. Your sister will grow a little taller and become more like a woman, and that will still scare you. Your brother will be a man, and he will continue to tower over you. The fruits in the bowl will continue to rot until you decide to bin them, or take a photo of their stillness. Stick a cigarette in an apple and watch its skin burn a little. In the darkness and in dim light, your face will be less round, and your eyes will be more tired, and you might have lost a little bit of your humour, although you are now a shadow living in shadows, ignoring calls and texts, refusing to meet up with other humans. Although you told the love of your life it's over, because you don't want him to be engulfed too. You are still writing, and you are still dreaming of drowning, and the colours are beautiful. Sanguine, turquoise, echoes blooming. There are days you don't sleep much, and there are days when all you do is sleep. And you set your alarm for 5:50 a.m, and you stare at the wallpaper. Each fold and wave and bump is a choir. When you return to them, which you will, like you always do, they will ask you the same questions and you will give the same answers. You are okay living, you guess, sipping from your cup and letting it run over. So that second poem in this section is called Sip. And I know when I gave it this title, I was definitely thinking of a few things. That saying, sippeth from your cup until it runneth over. This poem is definitely alluding to a sort of depression, to be honest. It was written at a time quite soon after university when I moved away from my home quite abruptly for a job, and I was living in Peckham, and it was really great, but I felt like I was really missing out on like my family life, my sister growing up in particular, and my mum was quite worried about me and all that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of things were going on. I definitely say the kind of time between graduation and finding my feet, it was a difficult time for me, definitely. I think I was engulfed by disappointment, engulfed and overwhelmed by adulthood. I don't think that I actually had the necessary infrastructure to navigate it successfully at the start, which is weird and kind of funny. And again, harking back to this idea that really the most important lessons you learn are outside of the classroom. And yeah, I remember when I shared this poem with a friend of mine, you know, he said it moved him deeply. And I think, yeah, it's just this idea of everything carrying on, even when you don't, when you stop. The neighbour, they still live their lives. People are still hurting. People are still loving. People are still having their hearts broken. People are still kind of getting on with things. And even though you feel lost, and even though you feel like your life, I don't know, is kind of maybe meaningless, or, you know, you're really having a hard time, you maybe don't feel like there's anyone you can talk to because everyone else is preoccupied. There are things on their minds. They're trying to make it out here alive, basically. And yeah, this is kind of the whole poem really about that kind of slow stillness. You know, have you ever sat and watched a tap and seen how the tricklets of water drip really slowly? I think this poem is almost a kind of verbal manifestation of that sort of imagery right there. And I definitely wanted to make use of kind of synesthesia and make use of colour and things like that. And And yeah, I suppose, you know, kind of just saying that you will get out of this eventually, but you kind of have to kind of go with the rhythm right now, I suppose. And yeah, this poem was just definitely was written when I was going through a rough time, basically, and I think it's just definitely a poem for anybody who just feels like they're a bit overwhelmed by the world and they just need a moment to pause and just sip from their cup for a moment and let things kind of just happen. The next poem in this section is hardly really a poem, it's just an interlude called 3:05 a.m. And it's just literally 4 lines. Owl eyes, bat wings, moon dance and night things. And actually, these words are words that come up quite a lot in previous poems. There's definitely a sense of nighttime through Elephant, actually, and the sense of kind of otherworldliness in some respects. And I think 3:05 a.m. I wrote this at that time, I think, and I think I used to write a lot in the early hours. Actually, I didn't sleep very well for a chunk of time when I was kind of creating this collection. And yeah, this poem is literally just kind of paying homage to those twilight hours where everything is quiet and you are left only with your thoughts and your thoughts alone. Rest in peace and rest in light. Rest among other African queens. They will keep you until I can reach you, safe from this cruel, cruel world. So again, that's just a really short poem called Aunty, and it's, you know, it was written in honour of my late aunt, Mafere Mansere, formerly known as Mafere Bangura. She passed away in Sierra Leone kind of during a really difficult time that my country was having, basically. And yeah, this is just kind of a poem, just kind of, you know, saying goodbye to her. And actually, I don't believe in heaven or hell, and I don't believe in the afterlife, but I think when someone is lost, or when especially after the death of my friend, actually, Ayo, I definitely, it's not that I started wanting to believe in God, but it's more I just started thinking about why people believe in God and religion and things like that. And I suppose, you know, it's all about hope, isn't it? That you will see your loved ones again one day, regardless of if you lose them now, you'll see them again. And if I believed in God and subscribed to a religion, then I would believe that I would see my friend and my aunt again. I think it's just kind of more, you know, I'm well aware that I don't believe in that kind of stuff, but it was just thinking about why people believe in those kind of things. It's all about hope, really. I think in the end, all we want is hope. All we want is something to cling on to, something to hold on to. And, you know, death is part of life. It's a certainty. Everyone will die in the end, and everyone will pass in the end. And, you know, in many ways, this poem is just kind of saying that. But yeah, it's just a little piece kind of saying goodbye to my aunt. I actually I don't remember meeting her. When I was born in Sierra Leone, she was very young. And my mum and I left for here. So yeah, I have no real memories of her. But we were just starting to reconnect over WhatsApp a few months before she actually passed away. So yeah, you know, it's a shame. I don't know what could have been, really. And I think you do have that strong sense of loss when you are an immigrant, to be honest. I think it's the plight of the immigrant. So much changes in your country. And again, life goes on. Your family, wherever they are, kind of get on with their lives, and you have to find a way to kind of to survive without them and still keep those family connections and ties strong regardless. This will be the first Christmas without him there to cut the turkey, to tell the kids to be grateful for everything they have. This will be the first Christmas without her to pray with, without him to play with. All their presents are under the tree, and they are still part of our family. We'll set their place at the table, maybe even a plate too. Carving knife at the ready, but my hymn sheet feels heavy. Her beautiful voice rings softly in my ear, and in this lonely, frightful hour, Whilst others stuff their faces with stuffing and their hearts bubble and burst with Christmas cheer, I would have already lost my appetite after the second bite of an empty Christmas lunch. This will be the first Christmas without him. The first without him to hold and smile with. This is the first Christmas that she will receive the cards alone, and besides himself with grief, he won't know what to do in his own home. This will be the first Christmas that you will phone, and she won't pick up, and the phone will ring and ring, as if understanding the sadness its rings represent, and the emptiness and void they will always represent. Instead of sleigh bells ringing, she will hear gunshots, like the 6 that stole her son right from her arms, the 6 that tore him from her womb all over again. And he will know it's Christmas time, but the wine will turn to blood, and every word from their mouths will sound like Ebola, and sound like disease. And that familiar stuffed feeling after too much to eat will feel like she is being suffocated. And when they say they can't breathe, she'll see him and hear his last words all over again. I can't breathe. He can't breathe. We can't breathe. That is an extract of the next poem in this section called The First Christmas. And, you know, I wrote this a couple of Christmases ago when so much was happening. In my country, we were ravaged by Ebola, so Christmas was cancelled in Sierra Leone, which is unheard of because Christmas means so much to people there. I remember that, you know, at that time, the latest victim of police brutality in America was a young black boy who was killed on Christmas Eve. And I just thought to myself, his parents would have already bought his presents and would have set the table and made plans for him to be part of all of the Christmas cheer. And this is not what they would have expected that their Christmas would look like. You know, in the grand scheme of things, those are very vacuous things to think about, but it was just those kind of details. I just thought, wow, this is their first Christmas without him, and they've had no time to prepare or anything like that. And again, you know, just really with a lot of my poems, kind of looking at the Black Lives Matter movement in particular and looking at loss and sorrow, I think, you know, I kind of reflect how I'm feeling at the time when I write them, and that's usually overwhelmed with grief myself. And, you know, the ending of that extract was obviously kind of alluding to Eric Garner, and just all of that really, basically, you know, all of the people being killed in America, you know, again, Mike Brown, referring to, I believe it was the 6 gunshots that took his life. And yeah, so I think this poem actually kind of brings together a lot of the different themes of loss that have been explored in Elephant so far. And yeah, I kind of used Christmas actually as a metaphor because it is a difficult time for people, regardless of what, you know, even if you haven't been a victim of police brutality, but it can be a time where everyone is looking at Christmas cheer and looking at, you know, positive things and community and family, and there's this emphasis on all of that stuff, and capitalism too. But for some people, it's a really, really hard time. It's the time where they fall deep into depression and other kind of mental illnesses because they have no family or community to lean on, or because, you know, times are really hard financially. So it can be a time of great sorrow for a lot of people, a time where you think about loss a lot. For others, it's a time of great joy, a time of celebration, a time of remembering that family is the most important thing. And I think Christmas is an interesting one, really, when we're looking at kind of the different sides of the spectrum in that regard. And this poem just kind of explores loss in a very deep sense. And I remember when I wrote it, actually, I put it out on SoundCloud, and I think it was one of those things that felt like, I'm kind of bringing down everyone's Christmas joy, but that's where my head was at that time, and I think a lot of people's heads are in that place at that time, really. But, you know, I love Christmas, though. But I just think the first Christmas is probably the hardest for most people, and it's not that, you know, you ever forget your loved ones at all. It's just that you learn to survive, and you learn to carry the burden and the weight of their loss, and you learn to kind of find a way to overcome, find a way to move on and move forward, always knowing that you carry them in your hearts forever. But yeah, I think this poem is also just kind of about finding a way to adjust, finding a way to survive, finding a way to carry on after sorrow. The route you took to school every day, twice a day, to and fro for 7 years looks different now. The chicken shops are gone and have been replaced with coffee shops and Italian cafes. The strong foreign accents that filled the air made this place home. The sounds that gave each molecule rhythm, gave life to atoms, gave beating heart red colour, have been ironed out with hot rod and replaced with received pronunciation and middle-class symphonies. The local pub that stood so proud for over 40 years is shut. It has been replaced with fancy apartments, the type of apartments your family can never afford to live in, and gated homes with iron bars and guards to keep the poor out, to keep folks like you out. The council flats that were the backdrop to the movie of your life have been bulldozed down, and the roadmen that gave colour to your growing up were wiped out with them. The air is stale now. Everybody looks the fucking same. They all wear top knots and have undercuts. They all wear dreadlocks and wear bindies as a fashion statement. They listen to reggae and ska and enjoy blackness as a theme, opening up hip-hop chip shops in chains like Turtle Bay, dipping in and out of sacred cultures, voiding everything of meaning. And they all wear denim and have migrated from East London to Elephant, Camberwell and Peckham. They weren't satisfied with Brixton or Notting Hill, opening up cereal cafes and lining streets with All Saints to replace the devils. So that was an extract of the final poem in the section called Denim, and it's about a different type of loss actually. It is about death, but really it's a death of community, a death of everything that I have known. It's about social cleansing and gentrification, something that's been happening for a very long time, for decades now in London. Everywhere's been gentrified, we just didn't necessarily notice until now. The places I mentioned, Brixton, Peckham, they're all examples of places that have undergone that particular type of treatment, shall we say. And yeah, you could just say this poem is shots fired everywhere. Every time I perform it, I do get this sense of that the white people in the room are uncomfortable, particularly those with top knots and undercuts and dreadlocks. And shots fired at the hip-hop chip shops of the world, that is a real thing. Shots fired at chains like Turtle Bay that tend to not hire black people but making their money off them, owned by a white man and a Sri Lankan man, really shots fired at everything and everyone who just takes the piss and profits off blackness, profits off black and brown people and puts nothing into their communities. Do you know what I mean? So this is all about really cultural appropriation, gentrification, social cleansing, and just, frustration with the city, frustration with London, frustration with just this country. I think, this book is definitely full of frustration with institutions, but also definitely, just kind of calling out people and how they do participate in these oppressive things, how they do participate in the erasure of black and brown people everywhere, quite literally, to be quite honest. I am from South East London. I don't live in South East London anymore because I can't afford to. I've been here my whole life, but I just can't afford to live in somewhere like Peckham. When I was at school, no one wanted to live in Peckham. It wasn't the place to be at all, It was full of roadmen and people stabbing each other. That's how it was seen anyway. I went to school near Elephant and Castle, and it was a really good school, but it was maybe a diamond amongst the rough, shall we say. So it's just funny to me that, how things have changed really. We used to have the 63 bus specifically for our school to make sure the girls got there and back safely, like it was actually that deep. And I remember I did a walk through my old area, because this is, I used to do this walk once or twice a day kind of thing. After I got off the bus, did the walk from the bus stop to my school for so long, from year 7 right through actually to sixth form, because I was at my school from year 7 right through until I went to university, because it was a sixth form college as well as a secondary school. And it's funny because that's what I did my whole life really, that walk to and fro. And I saw how the landscape changed so much. There was a pub there that, you know, had been there for over 40 years and one day it was just bulldozed down and replaced with like some Italian cafes. And, you know, obviously I drink coffees and lattes and everything like that too, and I, you know, suppose I'm part of the problem in a way, but I wonder how you can remove yourself from being part of the problem. I wonder how you can make sure that you aren't facilitating this stuff, and I'm not sure there is a way really. You either participate or get lost, don't you, in many ways, and even in participation you don't gain anything for yourself as a black person, as a brown person. You don't gain anything from your community, and again, you know, it's just out here trying to survive, I suppose. And this, you know, this poem is particularly about that, and I think, you know, the final lines of it, it's actually probably one of the longest poems in the collection. And actually the final section really sums it up, really. Everybody thinks that we were all born equal until you're told differently, until you learn differently. You know, I went to university with some very privileged people who thought that now that we're at the same university, we must have the same life and access to the same opportunities. That just wasn't the case. We are not all born equal, sadly, because of white supremacist structures. And it all depends on where you are born, where, you know, luck will have you land when you reach this earth, basically, as to really what your life will look like, I suppose. And I think as much as, yeah, hard work does play a part to it, I think, you know, I'm not here for respectability politics and policing, because there are people who work very, very hard. Black women work very, very hard and often are in the lowest paid jobs, are in the worst housing, are often left as single mothers. If it was all about hard work and things like that, then they'd be maybe the richest people in this country, to be honest. But it doesn't work like that. And Denim is very much, you know, a clapback, shots fired at all of that shit, basically. And just saying, you know, you are comfortable on the other side of the River Thames, planning your vacations in the sun and thinking about how you're going to help those poor people in Uganda or whatever part of Africa, because you don't even know the name of the country, you're just talking about Africa like it's a country. You're just planning those kind of trips out there that make you feel better about yourself and help you find yourself, and then probably leave those communities worse than when you found them, to be quite honest. There's a lot of debate over how great voluntourism actually is. The very name of it, voluntourism. A lot of the times these are people who have just graduated from university, don't know anything about life really, and go to these lands trying to teach, you know, these black and brown people how to do shit in their communities. I think there's a massive problem with it. I'm not saying don't go out and participate in other cultures and don't go out and learn about other cultures and help where you can, but I think this white saviour complex and Western saviour complex is something that is very acute in this society. And you know, as I've said kind of previously, I think that we are all susceptible to kind of playing that narrative out as well. I myself, I am British for all intents and purposes, you know, my passport says I am. I haven't grown up in these other countries, and if I were to go over, I'm sure I'd come with Western British cultural baggage as well. So yeah, I think Denim is really just the call to really look at yourself, basically, and how you are participating in the destruction of communities. So we've reached the end of episode 7 of Elephant Diaries. It's been a heavy one, I know. We've looked at loss, we've looked at death of people who were close to me, and we've looked at the wider idea of deaths of communities and deaths of parts of society, to be honest. And I think what I want you to take from this episode is just really, you know, again, there are different ways to lose people and different ways to lose full stop, to be quite honest. But yeah, we're really reaching the end of this series, and it's pretty amazing to me, actually. Next month, Elephant is coming out on May the 21st. So it's been really, really exciting to give you a bit of an insight into my work, what you can expect from the collection, how I've gone about putting it together and what it means to me. So yeah, we've got a couple more episodes to come still, so look out for those. Remember, my pre-launch event is happening this month, April the 30th, so get yourself booked onto that. The launch itself will take place on May the 20th, so to be first to know when tickets come out, I say subscribe to my mailing list. You can find all the details on www.sianabangura.com. And of course, find me on Twitter at Siana, SIANAARGH. I'm very active on there. But keep using the hashtag this is Elephant, hashtag countdown to Elephant. Join in the Twitter chats. I've been doing those every month. exploring the episodes that are out and exploring the key themes in the series so far. So yeah, I really appreciate your participation and your support, and I'll see you next time.